After the fierce storm, a new day gently dawned with a sweet tranquility. Delicate butterflies fluttered in the early morning sun, chasing each other among the dew-covered blossoms. High in the treetops, small birds glided and sang a clear harmony, as if to soothe all the wounds that life had just inflicted. Everything blends together gently like a love song of peace, a peace that Uyen has not felt in a long time. Uyen steps out of the small house, her legs no longer trembling as they did before. The fear that seemed to be ingrained in her mind has now vanished like the morning dew. Is it because of the silent protection of the director, or because this very peace had enveloped her heart? Uyen didn't know. She only knew that today, she stepped out with a different mindset, calmer, stronger. The first thing she thought of was the garden. She wanted to make it more beautiful, more vibrant, as a silent thank you to the director, the man who had hoped she would return, so much so that his footprints were still imprinted on the ground every day he visited. Uyen bent down by the pond, gently scooping up the yellow leaves floating on the water. The fish glistened as they swirled in the crystal-clear water, as if rejoicing at her return. During her loneliest days, they had sometimes been the friends who eased the emptiness in her heart. Then Uyen walked to the small plots of land. Just a few weeks ago, she had trembled as she sowed each seed, yet now the green shoots were thriving, full of life. The flower buds also tilted gently in the wind, as if responding to her caring touch. In front of the house, the bamboo fence was still unfinished. She continued weaving the straight bamboo poles, then bent down to plant young squash plants at the base of the fence. She silently hoped that one day, lush green vines would cover the fence, blossom, and bear fruit, enveloping the small house in the green of life. Who knows, when there were enough fruits, she might be able to take them to the small market of yesteryear, where she used to help her mother sell goods. A small hope, but enough to make her eyes light up. Uyen lifted the water bucket, gently watering each young sprout. The sparkling droplets fell to the ground, seeping into the soil like watering the silent dream in her heart. Under the new sunlight, Uyen's face glowed with a strange peace, a beauty that only comes when the heart begins to find a place to belong. After tending to each row of vegetables and each leaf in the garden, Uyen took a little time to care for herself. In her hands was a basket of freshly picked green vegetables, still damp with dew. She sat on the bamboo floor she had built herself, carefully plucking each vegetable stalk and young leaf. Deep within her, a hope had quietly emerged, a gentle yet profound hope. Would the director visit today? Would the two of them sit together again, sharing a simple meal like they had done so many times before? Uyen's simple habits, the bamboo floor, the garden, the modest meals, were deeply engraved in the director's mind. They were like a part of his life, a world that he remembered every time he left, and felt lighthearted every time he returned. Uyen stepped into the small kitchen. The kitchen they had built together, each brick still bearing the warmth of both of them. Today, she cooked her favorite dishes by hand, the same dishes that always made the director smile and praise her cooking. The bright red flames under the stove flared up, mingling with the smoke and the aroma of the food. The more she cooked, the more she longed. Each dish seemed to send a silent message. "Honey, please come home today." The kitchen, once cold and empty for so long, suddenly came alive with her presence. The sound of the knife hitting the cutting board, the crackling of the fire, the sound of her small feet moving, all turned the kitchen into a warm memory. She carefully prepared each dish and arranged them on the table that the director loved most. Everything was beautiful and neat, as if the meal was not just to fill stomachs, but to wait for someone. But then the sun was high in the sky. Uyen was still waiting. After a long while, still no sign of the director. She sat quietly at the corner of the table, her eyes fixed on the door. No one came. No familiar car sounds. Finally, Uyen quietly ate her meal alone. Each bite slid down her throat with difficulty. Hundreds of thoughts flashed through her mind, tangled like a ball of thread with no end in sight. Was it because she had left? Was it because the director was too busy with work? Or was it that she had hoped for too much, even though she was only someone being helped? After finishing her meal, she bowed her head to wash the dishes. Each drop of water that fell made her heart feel a little heavier. She intended to wash quickly, to chase away the nameless sadness clinging to her. But just then, from the far end of the garden, a familiar figure approached, as gentle as ever. The director turned off the engine from a distance and pushed the bike in, afraid the noise would startle Uyen if she was napping. When he saw the gate already open, an unmistakable joy lit up his face. The director hurried over, as if he couldn't contain himself. And that joy multiplied when he saw Uyen standing on the porch, her hands still wet and the smell of smoke lingering in her hair. He laughed, a smile as bright as a child who had just found his favorite toy. Uyen also smiled involuntarily, even though her heart had just been swept by a wave of sadness. Seeing the basket of clean bowls beside her, the director silently breathed a sigh of relief. She had eaten, so she hadn't waited for him and gone hungry. He felt more at ease than ever. The two sat down at the familiar wooden table, and then they talked about all kinds of things in life. Stories without names, without beginnings, without endings. The invisible distance between them suddenly vanished, for they had grown too accustomed to each other's habits, each other's rhythms, each other's breath. The director's words of concern, seemingly ordinary, made her blush involuntarily. She lowered her eyes, but her heart warmed like a midday fire. And he said he wanted to ask Uyen to come along to help him with something. She hesitated for a moment, thinking that maybe he really needed her, so finally Uyen nodded her head in agreement. The two stood up and walked out into the yard. The director carefully placed a helmet on her head, so gently that it made Uyen's nose sting. As the gate closed, the sound of the engine roared, and the two drove toward the road leading to the familiar market. The bustling crowd, the smell of fruit, the smoke from stoves, and the vendors' cries blended together to create a lively rhythm of life. The car drove through the fruit market and then to the food court. Uyen still didn't understand what he wanted her help with, until he suddenly stopped in front of a colorful shaved ice shop. Uyen was bewildered. He smiled. "Let's eat shaved ice. This is the job the director wants you to help with." Uyen laughed, flustered but so happy that her eyes sparkled like a child's. This was her first time visiting such a bustling food market, and she was being taken there by the director himself. The two ate and chatted about random things, but it brought them closer together, little by little. After finishing their meal, just as Uyen thought they would head back, the director led her to the next row of stalls. A whole array of cute hats and countless other items were displayed before her eyes. Uyen thought he probably wanted her to help choose a gift for his friends or someone close to him. But no, the items she chose, he insisted, were for Uyen. Uyen blushed, too embarrassed to say anything. He smiled softly, his voice gentle enough to warm her heart. "Next time, cook more delicious meals for me. Think of these as advance payment for your work." Then he picked out a really beautiful hat for her. Uyen looked at it and was afraid it would be too expensive. And moreover, the worry that her stepfather had someone following her still lingered, making her want to hurry home. As if understanding her thoughts, the director immediately said, "Don't worry, I've taken care of it. I met with your stepfather and Bin. They won't bother you anymore." Uyen stood frozen, too surprised to speak. His words made her fears melt away, as if a heavy door had just been opened. Passing by the end of the market stalls, he stopped again. "The director wants to buy you a blanket and a new mattress. You need to sleep well to make up for those difficult nights." Uyen stood beside him, only able to nod. The director chose each item carefully, each color soft, as if he understood exactly what would make Uyen feel most warm. Leaving the bustling market, the two ran down the familiar road leading to the small house. When the gate opened, the director and Uyen carried each new item inside and placed them neatly on the small table in the kitchen. Uyen sat across from the director, her lips moving but no words coming out. Finally, she whispered softly, Thank you, director. Thank you for bringing me a peaceful life and for always caring for me." The director looked at her, his eyes gentle. "I just want you to live better, to love yourself more, so that the past hurts don't follow you anymore." The two sat together, telling familiar stories that felt strange to Uyen, because this was the first time in her life that someone had made her feel so safe. The joy still lingered on her lips when the director looked at his watch. Seeming busy, he stood up, gave a few parting words, and walked toward the gate. Uyen could only stand in the yard, watching his back grow increasingly distant. For some reason in that moment, she didn't want him to leave at all. Uyen returned to the house and gently arranged each item the director had bought. She placed the new blanket on the edge of the bed, lightly stroking the soft fabric as if to fully feel the warmth it brought. Then she unwrapped the white helmet from its packaging, carefully placed it on the table, and gazed at it for a long time. Perhaps never before in her life had she felt a day hold so many surprises. Each item seemed to contain the director's silent concern, making her heart flutter with a feeling of both gratitude and excitement. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that life still held many beautiful things. And she, a girl who had once run away, once felt lost, could smile peacefully today. As the afternoon sun set, gentle and warm, Uyen slung her basket over her shoulder. She closed the gate and walked along the familiar path that led to the garden where she used to pick fruit to take to the market. The heavy lemons swayed in the wind, reflecting the golden afternoon light. The grapefruit trees were laden with fruit, their skins turning a rich yellow, giving off a faint fragrance. Uyen was so happy that her eyes lit up. She thought of the small market of days gone by, where she had stood helping her mother, struggling to survive the difficult days. But now, the feeling of having to run away, of being constantly afraid that someone would find and arrest her, had disappeared. The director had helped her get rid of all those fears. And so, her steps today were lighter, more eager. Uyen began picking pomelos. One by one, she carefully cut the stems and placed them neatly in the basket. Each golden pomelo seemed to gather the afternoon sun, making her happier with each pick. Then she moved on to another tree, her small hands working tirelessly under the fading sunlight. Sweat dotted her forehead, but Uyen didn't feel tired, only her heart filled with energy. When the basket was full, Uyen set it down on the ground, sat down to rest for a moment, then continued picking lemons. The plump, shiny green lemons glistened in the afternoon sun as she carefully cut each one. The second basket was quickly filled. Carrying 2 baskets of fruit on her back, Uyen walked towards the owner of the garden. The owner greeted Uyen with her familiar, affectionate gaze. She placed each basket on the scale, waited for the owner to calculate the price, and received her payment. The owner praised her generously. "This girl is so hardworking. It's been a long time since I've seen a child work so diligently." Uyen just smiled softly, her eyes sparkling with joy, not exhaustion. She bowed her head in thanks, then left, leaving behind the garden owner's affectionate gaze for a kind, hardworking young girl. The path back to her small house suddenly seemed more beautiful than ever, perhaps because Uyen's heart was filled with hope, and a small but precious happiness was quietly growing, little by little. The road home felt longer than usual. The afternoon sun beat down fiercely, making Uyen's shoulders ache and her hands grow numb from carrying 2 heavy baskets of fruit. But she kept walking, step by step, her heart longing to return to her small house, the only place where she felt at peace. As soon as she caught sight of the roofline, Uyen stopped in surprise. In the yard, the director was waiting. The director stood under the shade of a tree, his eyes fixed on the small path as if he had been standing there for a long time. When he saw Uyen dragging her feet with the heavy baskets of pomelos and lemons, he startled and ran over, his voice full of concern. "Why are you carrying so much? Let me help you." Without waiting for Uyen's response, the director bent down and lifted the basket of fruit onto his shoulder, while his other hand supported her basket of lemons. In that moment, Uyen felt her chest tighten, as if a wave of warmth spread throughout her body. Inside the house, the director placed each basket on the table and stood up with a sigh of relief, but his eyes still couldn't hide his pity. "It's so heavy. What if you fall on the way?" Uyen smiled and replied softly, "I'm used to it." But it was that very sentence that made the director frown, feeling even more sorry for her. Sitting down at the familiar bamboo table, the two chatted for a while. When he learned that Uyen only intended to take the fruit to the old market to sell, a place where few people bought anything, he thought for a moment and then said immediately, "Tomorrow, I'll take you to Chantho. I know a few fruit sellers there, and you'll sell everything right away." Uyen shook her head in alarm, afraid of bothering the director, afraid of owing him too much. "No need, director. It's too far. I'm embarrassed." But the An just looked at her with a determined gaze, his voice deep but warm. "It's okay. Just follow the director. The director will find a place to sell for you." "Okay?" Uyen looked into those eyes that had appeared countless times when she was at her weakest, protecting her when she was most afraid. Suddenly, all her worries melted away like evening clouds. She smiled softly, a gentle smile that even the director saw, and felt his heart lighten. Uyen nodded. "Okay, I'll go tomorrow." In that moment, she suddenly realized, after so many storms, after so many times thinking she was just a lonely person in this world, now, finally, she had someone standing behind her, someone who always silently protected her, always supporting her every step of the way, always caring for her more than himself. And thanks to the director, this life, once again, became worth living.